Hey guys, what's up? So today's video is going to be a little bit of a departure from our regularly scheduled content. Now, with the recent announcement of the brand new PUBG story mode that's coming out, and that's going to focus more on the background and lore of PUBG and exploring that universe, and also with the release of Erangel version 2, and all of the new built-in lore that comes with that, today I figured we're going to discuss this a little bit more in detail, and we're going to go into the full in-depth story of Erangel. Now, you can kind of think of this as a new mini-series we're going to do. After this, I'm going to do a video on the full story of Myanmar, and if you guys enjoy it enough, then I'll do the rest of the maps as well. So all I ask is if you guys enjoy videos like this, please make sure to drop a thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. And of course, subscribe if you want to see the rest of the videos and stick around for that. Now, thankfully for Erangel, this is the map that has the most official lore that can be expanded upon it. And so for the future maps, it's not quite as clear about the lore, but that's kind of the fun part, is that we get to speculate ourselves about it. But with Erangel, we have a nice solid foundation to springboard off to in this story, and I hope you guys enjoy. So without further ado, let's get started. So first of all, before we dive too deep into the map, let's take a look at the name Erangel first of all. Now, a lot of you already know the story behind this name. This was when Brendan Green was in charge of naming the map, and he named it after his daughter, whose name is Erin, of course. And believe it or not, the name of this is one of the least interesting parts about this lore, which is saying a lot because it's still pretty interesting, and I don't think that's the case for the rest of the maps, as I believe that their name of that map is at least a piece to the puzzle of that story. But regardless, Erangel is located on a fictional island in the Black Sea. Now, the Black Sea itself is pretty interesting. There were islands in the Black Sea that were used by the Soviet Union for military testing, just as is seen in Erangel. Now, the Black Sea saw its fair share of conflict during the Cold War, but the way that it's used nowadays is more like a smuggling channel. As of right now, it's used to transport goods, both legal and illegal, radioactive materials and drugs, and other counterfeit items that can be used to finance terrorism. The way the Black Sea is set up is that it's this buffer between the two main oceans, with the only way to get to the other one is through these water straits, which can be opened or closed at the military, in this case Turkey's, discretion. Something really cool about the Black Sea that I certainly didn't know is the fact that marine archaeologists really see this to be a gold mine. The reason for that is because the Black Sea has seen so much conflict throughout the centuries, and combined with the fact that the waters of the Black Sea are very deep and anoxic, that means lacking oxygen. For the most part, all of the sunken ships from whatever military force throughout the years, all of these ships have been preserved really well. Now, some of these ships have been underwater for more than 60 years, and they're almost completely intact. And when I read that, I realized that that's kind of a good way to describe all of Erangel, right? It's abandoned, it's overrun, but it's also preserved. When you think of something being post-apocalyptic, you think of like war-torn buildings, like completely destroyed, or walls entirely torn out, but all of the structures in Erangel, and especially the towns and houses, are all completely intact, minus a couple of small things. That means in part that there's no reason to believe that the war that took place at Erangel was any kind of standard war. Because the area is not war-torn in the traditional sense how you would normally think about it, this means that the battle was not clear-cut. It wasn't divided into two equal halves. It was not two powerful forces fighting over for control over a certain area of land. Although that may be part of it, that wasn't the reason why Erangel has ended up as it has today. Now, we know officially that Erangel was occupied by the Soviet forces in the 1950s. And we also know that this military operation here was testing biological and also chemical weapons on the population that was already residing. Now, recently I've been reading this book called The Gulag Archipelago. This is written by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. It essentially has to do a lot with totalitarianism, and it's written from the perspective of a Soviet captain who was sent to the prisons for criticizing the Soviet government and particular people in the government in his private letters. It's some pretty wild stuff, but it's very relevant to what this Erangel lore has to offer. Now, what's written in the book that seems to be exactly what's reflected in Erangel is the fact that the population wasn't entirely innocent, and back in the Soviet Union, in real life, it got so corrupt that even members of your own family could have been government informers, so if you step out of line, then you'd be immediately sent to the prisons, and you can kind of see that reflected in Erangel Remastered. People have pointed out that this leader or dictator, whatever we're calling him, unfortunately, we don't have a name for him as far as I can tell, but he's kind of like a, he's a Stalin-like figure. You can see his propaganda plastered all over the entire map, and then you can see also when you go into the resistance hidden bunkers, the fact that these signs are labeled everywhere with the word liar attached to it. What I find interesting about that is that it's clearly an indication that this entire resistance maybe wasn't all fighting together as one population, right? Because this is such a local movement, it was had to be hidden in cellars. It wasn't that the military couldn't fight off everybody in there. It was probably more that there was a good amount of the population that agreed to either be sent to these prisons, either be a government informer, or just, agreed to be tested on because they don't want to put up a resistance, but a small portion of that population did set up their own rebellion. And we know this resistance is marked by the lion flag that's all over Erangel Remastered, so we can kind of see these two factions clashing, and when you see those markings hanging around the map, there's one word that's always attached to them, and it's this, which translates to freedom. So this sets the stage a little bit better. Clearly, right now, we have a Soviet military who is in control of this Erangel island, and in turn, the population, although the population may not be helping itself too much, the only hope they have is this resistance. And we know the Soviet forces are testing these biological and chemical weapons on this population for, advancements in the war. Now, we don't know specifically what these are going to entail. We're probably going to learn about more of that in detail in the single-player PUBG story game, but we do know one of the tools for sure. We know one of the tests absolutely, and this is the blue zone. Now, I think a lot of casual players who just play this game aren't really sure what the blue zone was. Some people think it's gas, some people just aren't sure what it is. Maybe it's nothing, but this is an electrical field that the military developed in order to take control more of that population. You can think about it almost as an electric fence. Like, if you have a dog and if you've ever been shocked by like an electric fence collar, then you kind of know what that feels like, but you can think of this as like a way more potent version of that, and also one that the Soviet military has complete and utter control of, and you can use this blue zone technology in order to really herd the people like sheep. Now, this was pretty much the extent of all we knew about Erangel's lore up until Erangel Remastered, and in these secret resistance bunkers, we get a lot more light shed on the fact that this military had an idea to sustain a totalitarian hold on this entire island. Now, from here, you think the story would be pretty straightforward. The idea is that we play as the resistance fighters against this military, and you can also see kind of echoes of that again in the resistance bunkers, where all of these pictures and photographs of the island in certain like key points are highlighted and circled in places of attack, either to signify that this is where the leader, this dictator is going to be, or where they need to establish weak points. Either way, the marks all over this map, whatever purpose they serve, are all linked to this key factor of the resistance fighting back against this military. Now, for the PUBG single-player story mode that's coming, I think it's a perfectly plausible idea that the idea is we are going to be playing as this resistance, and this is going to be the main focus of the story, but maybe it's not. Maybe what's going on right here is like a side story to what we actually play in the PUBG campaign, the story mode, whatever that game is going to be. It's certainly going to expand on this Erangel lore. This is exactly why this has been put into the game, but maybe we don't play as the resistance. Maybe it's somewhat of a branch storyline entirely, or maybe even crazier, we play as the military in this game. I think from whatever perspective we're playing at in the story mode could be quite interesting. And we also know from Erangel Remastered in the hints that the map provides is that at least part of this resistance plan was to explode the radioactive generators. The nuclear reactors around Milta Power were #1 targeted in these photographs, and also when you visit the spot in the map, one of them has been entirely exploded. Now, if I had to guess, this would be the single event that caused the entire island to be abandoned, the military, the population, and all. And so that might lead you to believe that what we're playing in Erangel Remastered is like post the events of what happened here. And I think that's generally a plausible theory, but I think there's a little more to it than that. You might ask yourself, okay, if that's the case, if this entire island's been abandoned, then why are there 100 people here? Why, like, what's the idea behind the battle royale? The theory that a lot of people like to run with for the Erangel BR is the fact that we are the remaining survivors on this island, and maybe there's only a couple ways to escape, and so I guess the strongest or the last one that wins is going to be able to get off the island. And I guess that's a credible theory, but I think there's a better one. The players that are actually in the battle royale mode, I don't believe are the survivors or the population. I think we play as the military, and I'll explain why. The book that I was telling you about earlier explains how soldiers would come back from the war and then be instantly taken to the prisons. It was essentially about how the system of itself would swallow up its own individuals who supported it. This includes regular citizens, of course, but it also includes military men and even officers. So with this Soviet military sending its own officers and captains into its prisons, and then we have to sort of figure out what to do with all of these extra prisoners, I think the idea is that Battle Royale is we're all military, either officers or just individuals or soldiers in that force. All of them were sent to prisons, but were given the option of freedom if they fight it out here, and the one who remains gets to go free. It's actually a lot darker that way when you think about it, and it makes sense though, because this also explains how every single person in this game knows how to use every weapon. Like, every character in this game is familiar with how to use all the guns, how to use all of the military equipment, and the fact that all of this gear is scattered around the island is also due to the fact that it, this is probably leftover stuff from that military that's been evacuated, but they're sending their prisoners here. They're prisoners of war, essentially. And that would also explain how the blue zone works, too. If these, like, former military men are, you know, put onto this island by this system, then it's forcing these people together because maybe they don't want to fight. You know, perhaps maybe your friend was with you in this prison and you both have to fight against one another. It's either your choice is to die or you have to fight the other soldiers. I think that idea is way more interesting than just rather we're the population fighting it out for some arbitrary reason. No, I'm not sure if that's the angle that the PUBG story mode is going to go for, but at least probably explains the BR, and if they want to go with like that as being the canon version of it, then I think it works out fine. In all likelihood, in the PUBG story mode, we'll probably play from the perspective of the resistance, or maybe this resistance versus military will be like the side branch of the story. I'm not really sure, and it's a little bit too early to speculate about the specifics of this game, but at least they're going a little bit more in detail with the lore of this, getting us ready for the single player mode from Erangel, and hopefully if the other maps get remastered, then a lot more story is going to come with those as well, because I find this stuff unbelievably fascinating. But that is basically the full story of Erangel as far as I can tell. This was my best interpretation of it, of all the information given, and of course, I want you guys to let me know what your thoughts on this and your theories about Erangel in the comment section down below. Now, as I said earlier, I am going to be covering Miramar in a future video, and if you guys enjoyed these two, then I'm going to do the last two maps as well, like a full detailed story of these as much as possible. Erangel does have the most like canon lore, especially with the remaster, so the other maps are going to have to be a little bit speculative just based on the very minuscule amount of information that's provided in those, but we can make whatever's provided into something that I think you guys will find really interesting. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on this video in the comment section down below. I really hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, rating, subscribe if you are brand new, of course, and I'll see you all on the next stream or the next video. Take it easy, guys, and peace out.